and I was granted what is called in our church a release, which is basically the equivalent of a divorce.
The courtroom did not breathe like an ordinary room. It had its own pulse, a slow, heavy rhythm born from decades of whispered arguments, pounding gavels and lives rewritten in ink. The air smelled faintly of polished wood mixed with the dust of old files, as though the very walls had absorbed every heartbreak ever spoken here. Mary stepped inside, and it felt as if the room swallowed her whole. The polished floorboards reflected the dim yellow of the overhead lights. Every creak of her shoes echoed longer than it should have, reminding her with each step that this was not a hallway, not a church, not a dining room she once shared with family. This was an arena, and today she was not just a woman. Evidence, she was accusation. She was unfinished business. She held the folder so tightly against her chest that her knuckles blanched white. It was thin, far too thin for the weight it carried in her life. Inside that folder was not only a piece of paper, but the ghost of her past self, the woman who had once sat at a table with Cody. Pen in hand, believing she was signing an ending, believing she was burying a marriage already dead in spirit, believing she was free. The folder was light, almost fragile, but in Mary's arms it felt heavier than stone. Because within it was the possibility that her grief had been a performance scripted by lies. She walked slowly toward the plaintiff's table. Every face turned toward her, some with pity, some with hunger, some with that particular glint of curiosity people reserve for other people's tragedies. She did not look at them. She kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, because to meet their gazes was to admit she was a spectacle. She would not give them that. Not today. Across the room, Cody sat with a stiffness he tried to mask as calm. His hair looked too carefully combed, his suit pressed as though the crispness of his shirt could shield him from what was coming. He tapped his knee beneath the table, up and down, a restless rhythm betraying the storm beneath a facade. He avoided looking at Mary. He avoided looking at anyone, really. His eyes darting from ceiling fan to wall panel to the faint crack in the floor tile, as though every object in the room offered him a safer stare than the woman across from him. Beside him, Robyn sat like a statue, cracking from within. Her lips moved in whispers too low for human ears, but her fingers wound tighter and tighter around the silver chain at her neck. She twisted it until her knuckles trembled, as though if she let go even for a moment, the chain might dissolve, and with it the fragile illusion of control. Her back was straight, but her eyes betrayed her. Flickers of fear, flashes of guilt, a storm gathering in silence. Mary sat down, her chair scraping against the floor. The sound was louder than it should have been, slicing the tense air like a blade. She placed the folder on the table but kept one hand resting on it, unwilling to let it go just yet. Around her the gallery whispered, the kind of murmurs that swirl when people sense a storm is about to break. She did not turn to them. She had learned long ago that whispers had no weight until given attention. The double doors opened once more. The bailiff's voice cut across the buzz. All rise. And like a tide, the room stood. Mary rose with them, her knees stiff, her pulse hammering against her ribs. The judge entered, silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, glasses perched at the tip of her nose, eyes sharp enough to slice through pretense. She carried herself with the authority of someone who had seen too many excuses, too many tricks, too many desperate stories to be fooled by charm. She climbed the steps to the bench, sat, and with a single nod commanded the air itself into obedience. Court is now in session, the bailiff declared. Papers rustled. The gallery sat. Cody adjusted his tie. Robyn's chain glinted beneath the lights. Mary inhaled slowly, forcing her breath into steady rhythm. Her lawyer, Erica West, stood. Youthful yet hardened by sharp intelligence, Erica's eyes flashed with determination. She had been trained in contract law, schooled in the intricacies of family litigation. When she had first taken Mary's case, she thought it would be routine. But routine had long since burned away the moment she read the documents. She had seen the gaps, the absences, the signature without a seal, the hollow line where a stamp should be. What she held in her briefcase today was not just evidence, it was a revelation. "Your Honor," Erica began, her voice crisp, clear, carrying the gravity of the accusation. "We intend to prove that the divorce between Mary Brown and Cody Brown was never finalized. That the papers presented to my client were incomplete, improperly processed, or deliberately withheld. And we intend to show that this was no accident." The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Ripples of gasps, whispers, shifting bodies. Cody's jaw clenched. Robyn's eyes widened. Even the gallery stilled. Hungry for what would come next? The judge raised her head, gaze narrowing over the rim of her glasses. "Counselor," she asked, voice measured but edged, "are you making an allegation of fraud?" Erica did not blink. "Yes, Your Honor, fraud, misrepresentation, and deliberate legal trickery designed to deny my client her marital rights and access to community property." The gallery erupted in a collective gasp. Shoes scuffed the floor. Someone whispered, too loudly, and then hushed as the judge lifted her hand. Cody shifted uncomfortably. Robyn pressed her lips into a bloodless line. The defense attorney stood. Thomas Garver, seasoned, polished, a man who had defended Cody for over a decade. He adjusted his suit jacket, raised his chin, and spoke in tones dripping with disdain. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. The divorce was filed properly, with proper counsel, in good faith. This is nothing more than an attempt to relitigate a settled matter because one party regrets her decision." The judge's eyes did not soften. "We will let the evidence speak." And that was when Mary felt her hand loosen from the folder. The moment she had dreaded was the moment she had waited for. Slowly, carefully, she slid it across the table. The brown folder opened with a soft sigh of paper. Inside lay the sheet that had defined her last years. She lifted it, not with trembling but with finality, and laid it flat on the table for all to see. The courtroom leaned forward as though pulled by gravity itself. Erica picked up the paper, holding it high for the judge, for the gallery, for everyone to witness. "This," she declared, "is what my client believed was her absolute divorce decree. Both signatures are present, Mary Brown, Cody Brown. But look here, there is no state stamp. No docket number, no court receipt. This was never filed." Silence filled the room, a silence alive and trembling, the kind of silence that screams louder than any voice. Mary's voice broke through, soft but resolute. "I thought I was free." Cody scoffed, his voice loud, biting. "You wanted? Out, Mary. You asked for this." The judge's gavel came down sharp. "Mr. Brown, you will remain silent unless spoken to." But the room was already spinning into whispers. Fraud, deception, betrayal. The words slithered through the gallery. Robyn's face drained of color. Cody's mask cracked, his jaw tightening. Erica set the paper back on the table, tapping the blank space where the stamp should have been. "And there is more, Your Honor. While this document sat unfiled, Robyn Brown applied for a marriage license. On the application, she declared Cody Brown legally divorced. But by state records, he was not." Robyn gasped, sharp and audible. The gallery leaned forward as though watching a curtain fall on a play they hadn't realized was scripted. Cody's eyes darted. The judge leaned in, voice steely. "Are you saying misleading information was presented to this court?" "Yes, Your Honor," Erica replied firmly. "And we have the dated forms to prove it." The gallery erupted. Words like bigamy, fraud, cover-up hissed from seat to seat. Robyn gripped her chain so tightly her fingers reddened. Cody's composure faltered, his face twisting into a mask of suppressed rage. The judge raised her gavel and struck it once. The sound echoed like thunder. We will recess. Court will resume after documentation review. Chairs scraped. The gallery buzzed louder now. No longer whispers, but open speculation. Mary remained seated, her folder closed once more, her eyes straight ahead. She did not look at Cody. She did not look at Robyn. She looked past them, beyond them, into a horizon only she could see. She inhaled deeply, a breath filled not with fear but with resolve. And then, almost too soft to hear but sharp enough to cut through the chaos, Mary whispered, "This time I hold the knife." The words lingered in the air long after the judge left the bench, long after the gavel fell silent, long after the gallery filed out. For the first time in years, Mary felt not broken, but armed.
Robyn and I have an employee, we call her a nanny. She comes over, she helps with caring for the kids, and she helps with...
The gavel's echo still lingered in Mary's ears long after the judge left the bench, as though wood against wood had carved itself into her bones. The words she had whispered this time, "I hold the knife," refused to fade. They clung to the walls of the courtroom, to the whispers in the gallery, to the silence pressing against Cody's jaw. Even in recess, with the gallery spilling into the hallways and reporters gathering like flies beyond the courthouse doors, Mary sat unmoved. Her folder rested on the table once more, but the paper inside it no longer felt like a weapon hidden in brown cardboard. Now it felt like a live fuse waiting for the next strike. The air in the courtroom was heavier when the session resumed, as if everyone who re-entered carried the weight of what they had just seen. Even the gallery, once buzzing with murmurs, seemed more restrained, more reverent. Something had shifted. The revelation of a signed but unfiled decree was no longer gossip, it was history. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a low vibration. That seemed to synchronize with Mary's pulse. She sat straighter now, her hands folded carefully. Her gaze fixed on the bench where the judge returned with a firm expression, silver hair gleaming under the pale light. The judge adjusted her glasses, eyes sharp. "We will resume. Counsel, proceed." Mary's lawyer, Erica, rose again. There was no tremor in her voice, no hesitation. If anything, she seemed steadier now, as though the recess had been her chance to sharpen her blade. She stepped toward the projector, a slim machine perched on its stand like a predator waiting to display its prey. She lifted the divorce paper once more, slid it under the lens, and with a click, the wall behind the judge lit up. There it was, enlarged, impossible to deny the signatures. Mary Brown, Cody Brown, and the emptiness where a stamp should have lived. The absence filled the room louder than any presence could have. The gallery leaned forward instinctively. Eyes narrowed, breaths held. Even Cody, who had once scoffed so loudly, now avoided looking at the glowing projection. He stared instead at his hands, clasped tightly together, knuckles straining pale, as though if he gripped hard enough, reality might change. "Your Honor," Erica began, her voice clear, reverberating across the hushed space. "This is not a technicality. This is the absence of legality. Without a state stamp, without a docket number, without processing, this document has no authority. It is not a divorce decree. It is a piece of paper signed and abandoned." The defense lawyer, Garver, shifted in his seat. He rose slowly, his voice smooth but laced with strain. "Your Honor, clerical errors do occur. Tensions of both. Parties were clear. The marriage was over in spirit, if not in ink. Surely we cannot weigh technical absence over the clear actions of both Mr. Brown and Ms. Brown," but Erica cut him off, tone sharpening. "Intent does not equal follow-through. The law requires process. And here we will show that the failure to file was not an oversight, not a mistake, but a deliberate act with clear motive. To deny Mary Brown her rightful share of property, to conceal financial transfers, and to enable Mr. Brown to remarry while still legally wed." The words hung in the air, a blade suspended. The judge's face remained neutral, but her silence was its own verdict. Continue. And so Erica did. She gestured toward the side door and the bailiff opened it. A woman entered, brisk, professional, carrying a stack of documents under her arm. She introduced herself as Dana Keller, forensic accountant. Her voice carried a crispness honed by years of dissecting numbers into narratives. She walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and then began. I was retained to review financial records related to Mr. Brown and his associated entities, Dana said, unfolding her papers. She spoke without flourish, but her words cut cleaner than any dramatics could. Over an 18-month period, I discovered a pattern of transfers between multiple LLCs controlled by Mr. Brown, many of which coincided directly with the date of the unfiled divorce agreement. She gestured toward the projector, and suddenly, the wall filled with arrows, charts, dollar signs. The neat geometry of crime laid bare. Here, she said, pointing to a red arrow. An Arizona cabin moved into a newly formed LLC within weeks of the supposed divorce. No disclosure to Mrs. Brown. She tapped another arrow. A joint account drained, over $50,000 removed, also without notice. Funds then redirected into a shell corporation registered under Robyn Brown's name as secondary beneficiary. The gallery gasped in waves. Some mouths formed words without sound. Okay? Others muttered sharp accusations, fraud, concealment, theft. Mary sat still, but inside her chest the pulse of vindication hammered. This was not just her story told in sorrow. This was evidence. This was Inca numbers telling the truth she had carried alone for years. Cody shifted in his seat. His leg bounced violently now. Robyn pressed her hands into her lap, her silver chain abandoned at last. Her face had gone pale, her lips trembling as though forming silent prayers. Dana's voice did not falter. The timing is too precise to be coincidental. The transfers began immediately after the signing of the unfiled decree. The lack of filing ensured that Mary Brown remained legally bound to Mr. Brown, allowing continued use of joint assets in transactions presented as independent. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Are you saying, in your expert opinion, that the failure to file provided financial benefit? Yes, Your Honor, Dana replied simply. And that benefit was not small. It was substantial. The gallery erupted again. The word substantial seemed to ricochet against the walls, growing louder, heavier. Reporters scribbled furiously. Even Garver, Cody's attorney, shifted uncomfortably, his polished facade beginning to crack. But Erica was not done. She let the silence linger, then spoke. And this, Your Honor, is not the only example. There is more. She gestured again, and another witness approached. Paige McCready, former bookkeeper, walked hesitantly to the stand. She carried with her a smaller folder, blue this time, but inside it lay a revelation far larger than its size. She was sworn in, her hands trembling slightly as she raised them. In my role as bookkeeper, Paige began softly. I discovered unusual transfers connected to something called the Wasatch Asset Trust, located in Utah. She opened her folder, sliding a single notarized letter forward. This is an instruction letter signed by Mr. Brown, transferring over $820,000 into the trust. The listed future beneficiary was Robyn Brown. The room erupted again, louder this time, as though the air itself had cracked. Robyn gasped audibly. Cody stiffened, his eyes shooting daggers across the room. The gallery buzzed. Trust. Fund Utah Robyn's name. Erica walked to the projector, held up the letter, and then clicked to the next slide. An email appeared, its subject line stark. She read aloud, Robyn can manage the Utah properties once Mary signs. She won't complain. The silence was louder than the chaos had been. Mary's heart clenched, her breath sharp. She turned, slowly, deliberately, and fixed her eyes on Cody. Her voice did not tremble. You set it up before you even told. Me. Cody did not respond. His mouth pressed tight, his eyes narrowed to slits. But the flush on his cheeks betrayed him. And then, as though the knife had not twisted deep enough, Christine Brown rose from her seat. Called to testify, she approached with a calm that barely masked the storm in her eyes. She swore in, sat, and then spoke with quiet conviction. We were told the divorce was finished. I asked to see the papers. Cody said it was private. The judge raised a brow. And what was your response when you discovered it was not filed? Christine's voice wavered, but she steadied it. I was sick. 'Cause if he could do this to her, he could do it to any of us. And then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small recorder. I made this recording 2 years ago. The courtroom froze as the playback began. Robyn's voice filled the air. He couldn't submit it immediately. There were accounts, business matters. It's just a piece of paper. Christine's voice followed, angry but controlled. She thinks she's divorced, Robyn. She's mourning. You know that. Robyn's recorded response. It's just a piece of paper. He'll take care of it when the time comes. Room erupted once more. Murmurs of conspiracy, deceit, cover-up buzzed like hornets. Robyn buried her face in her hands. Cody gritted his teeth, his mask cracking. The judge's gavel struck again, the sound booming. Order, order in this court. But the order was temporary, fragile, because what came next would break even that.
There's like milestone birthdays, and this is a milestone birthday. You know, turning 16 is a milestone.
The silence after Christine's recording had not really ended. It had only been pushed deeper into the walls, hiding behind the wood paneling and the rustle of papers. Every person in the room felt it, as if the air itself was waiting for one. Final blow. The gavel had restored temporary order, but no one could deny the undercurrent. Something bigger still lingered, just out of reach. Mary sat at the plaintiff's table with her hands folded neatly, her spine straight as a pillar. She was not fidgeting, not blinking too often, not showing the slightest tremor. To the casual eye, she appeared calm, but beneath her ribs, her heart was running like a river after storm. Across from her, Cody no longer carried the mask of charm he had tried on when the hearing began. His posture sagged. His suit jacket wrinkled, where his shoulders hunched forward. The leg that had once tapped nervously now jiggled like a piston he could not control. His lips pressed into a tight, thin line that threatened to burst with every exhale. And Robyn, oh Robyn, she was not the woman who had walked in earlier, twisting a silver chain around her fingers as though it could anchor her. The chain now lay abandoned on the defense table, forgotten. Her hands were clasped in her lap, knuckles pressed together in a knot of flesh and bone. Her eyes fixed not on the judge, nor on Mary, but somewhere far away. She looked like a child waiting to be scolded, like someone caught between confession and collapse. When the judge re-entered after recess, the room's breath caught. Her black robe swayed as she mounted the bench, silver hair gleaming beneath. The harsh lights, her face more severe than ever. The gavel's strike reverberated like thunder. Court is back in session. The gallery hushed instantly. Reporters leaning forward, pens poised, eyes gleaming like predators circling prey. They had smelled blood before, but now they sensed a kill. Erica West rose slowly, her hands placed firmly on the table before she stepped forward. She looked not at Cody, not at the judge, but directly at Robyn. "Your Honor," she began, her tone steady but edged with something sharper. "The plaintiff calls Robyn Brown." The gallery erupted in gasps and murmurs. A ripple of voices filled the air until the judge's gavel slammed once more. Order. Robyn froze, her eyes wide, her lips parting in shock. She turned toward Cody, eyes desperate, searching for rescue. Cody leaned in immediately, his mouth moving, whispering urgent words no one else could hear. His hand twitched toward her arm as though to hold her in place, but Robyn shook her head ever so slightly. Something inside her seemed to shift. The whispers from Cody did not soothe. They poisoned, and she knew it. Slowly, with a stiffness that made every movement look painful, Robyn rose to her feet. The gallery's collective gaze burned into her, back as she walked the aisle to the stand. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, each step echoing louder than the last, until it seemed like the entire room was counting her steps. 1, 2, 3. She did not dare look at the gallery. She did not dare look at Mary. Her gaze remained downcast, fixed on the path in front of her. The bailiff met her at the stand. "Raise your right hand." She obeyed, her arm trembling slightly as it rose. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Her voice cracked, but the words came out. "I do." She lowered herself into the chair. For a moment she adjusted her skirt, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She looked like a woman caught in a storm she could no longer control, hair invisible, yet wind-tossed in the hurricane of revelation. Erica approached slowly, not rushing, giving Robyn the silence to weigh upon her. Finally she spoke, voice calm but clear. "Mrs. Brown, you have been present for all testimony today. You've heard the evidence about the unfiled divorce. You've seen the financial transfers. You've listened to the recordings. Now I'll ask you plainly. Did you know Mary's divorce from Cody was never finalized?" Robyn swallowed her, throat bobbing visibly. Her lips parted, closed, then parted again. Silence stretched long enough that even the judge leaned forward, waiting. Finally, a whisper slipped out. "Cody told me it was done." "Did you ever see proof?" Erica pressed, her tone sharpening. "Did you ever see a stamp? A docket number? A decree signed by a judge?" Robyn's head shook, almost imperceptibly. At first, then firmer. "No." The gallery erupted with murmurs. The judge raised her gavel again. Silence. Erica did not relent. She stepped closer, her heels clicking with precision. "ETU applied for a marriage license. On that license, Mrs. Brown, you swore under penalty of perjury that Cody was legally single. How do you explain that?" Robyn's shoulders sagged, her eyes wet with unshed tears. "I trusted him. I trusted what he told me. I thought it was just paperwork. Just paperwork," Erica repeated, her voice heavy with disdain. She let the phrase hang in the air like a curse. Then she stepped closer still. "Mrs. Brown, weeks after the signing, you wrote Mary a letter. You told her not to worry. You told her it was only a formality. Did you write that letter?" Robyn's voice cracked audibly. "Yes." Erica's voice was ice. "So you knew it wasn't final?" Robyn's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Her hands clenched in her lap and her eyes darted once more toward Cody. He sat stiff, his jaw like stone, refusing to meet her gaze. He offered no support, no rescue. In that moment, Robyn seemed to realize the truth. She was alone. The gallery leaned forward, a sea of eyes locked on her. The whispers began again. Complicit, cover-up, fraud. Robyn pressed her lips together, shaking her head slightly as though to ward them off. But the truth pressed heavier than their voices. And then, with a trembling breath, Robyn reached down to her handbag. Her fingers fumbled with the zipper. The sound of it opening sliced through the tense silence. She reached inside, dug deep, and pulled out something small and black, no bigger than her thumb. The courtroom collectively gasped as she held it up. A flash drive. Her hands shook so badly that the small device wobbled between her fingers. Her voice quivered, but her words were steady. "This contains everything, every file, every transfer, every conversation he ever made using my login. I saved it. I saved it in case one day I needed it. And I can't carry it anymore." The gasp that followed was not just sound. It was a wave that seemed to crash against the walls and ceiling, reverberating in the bones of everyone present. The reporters bent forward so quickly, their pens nearly snapped against their notepads. The gallery erupted into a cacophony of disbelief, gasps, mutters, curses, until the judge's gavel slammed like a gunshot. Order. This courtroom will have order. But even her thunderous voice could not erase the image, Robyn Brown. Once silent, once complicit, now laying down what might be the weapon to destroy it all. Cody exploded from his chair, his voice hoarse with fury. "Robyn, don't sit down, Mr. Brown," the judge thundered. Her gavel struck again. Cody froze mid-movement, his jaw clenched, his fists trembling at his sides. His eyes burned into Robyn, but Robyn refused to look back. The bailiff moved quickly, retrieving the flash drive from Robyn's shaking hand and setting it on the evidence table. For a moment, the small black object seemed to glow under the courtroom lights. A piece of plastic transformed into a live explosive. The silence that followed was suffocating. Erica approached the evidence table, her steps slow, deliberate, as though approaching a bomb. She lifted the flash drive between her fingers and turned to the judge. Her voice was calm, but the weight of it pressed against every ear in the room. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, we request to enter this into evidence." The judge's eyes narrowed, her lips tightening into a line. She leaned forward, then gave a single nod. "Granted." And in that instant, the tension broke like a dam. The gallery gasped. Reporters scribbled so furiously the scratching of their pens filled the silence. And Cody slumped back into his chair as though someone had cut the strings holding him up. The projector screen flickered to life once more. But this time, it did not show a single fragile piece of paper. It promised an avalanche.